Hi everyone and welcome. Today we are joined by Seyed Mohammad Marandi, a professor at Tehran University and a former advisor to Iran's nuclear negotiation team. Welcome back to the program. Um, it appears that the worst has happened. The Americans has now directly attacked. I just wanted to ask a bit about the extent of the damage to Iran, but also I guess, the pending retaliation. But if we can start with the damage, what is actually happening there on the ground? Because the messages are quite conflicting.
Well, there's a complication here, and that's why I have to explain carefully. The damage was not severe, but the Iranians don't want to downplay that. They don't want to downplay what happened. They're saying that this was an act of aggression, an act of war. And so they're stressing that it shouldn't be downplayed. So but the reality is that the Americans did the thing that happened is that the United States tore up the UN Charter. It tore up international law, and it has engaged in war against Iranians. And that is something that they will have to deal with, and they will have to face the consequences. And there will be Iranian retaliation. So the amount of damage is not relevant at all. They have waged war. They've carried out war. They're just like Netanyahu. My understanding is, well, since it's too early, I don't want to go into details because there may be some things, there's some information missing, and which so I need more time to figure out everything. But in any case, for I think for the Iranians, the issue that is important is that the war against the Israeli regime will continue. Iran will continue to punish the regime. We saw this morning the Iranians carried out heavy missile strikes. And 24 hours a day, the Iranians are carrying out drone strikes, and many of those drones are hitting their targets. And they're also emptying air defenses. The Iranians are not going to halt their nuclear enrichment program under any circumstances. In addition to that, I can say that Iran, although they haven't decided, but we are moving closer to Iran leaving the NPT. So, if only to protect Iran's assets, Iran should, from now on, uh, rethink its cooperation with NPT so that the United States and others would not know what Iran is doing, so that they cannot kill people or destroy assets. Again, even though what the United States did today was not of great uh, significance in the sense that there wasn't much damage, there wasn't extensive damage, but they carried out an act of war. And that is what's important to the Iranians. So it will have global consequences because the UN Charter no longer has any value. It will have military consequences because Iran will retaliate, and it will have um, um, consequences for the International Atomic Energy Agency because in future Iran is going to think differently about how it cooperates and what sort of information, if any, should be given to bodies that are controlled by the United States. As I'm sure you know, the International Atomic Energy Agency's Board of Governors is a political body. It's not a technical body. And I did a deep seek search, and 17 of the members, DeepSeek isn't always right, neither are any of the other AI um, uh, apps, but 17 of the 35 member states are European and North American. And then Korea and Japan are also permanent members. That gives the West a very clear majority on all issues. And so when the IAEA is used as a tool for Western domination and Western hegemony and to justify aggression, then I think that there are going to be serious discussions in Tehran about our future relationship with this body. So what the United States has done is um, is going to have major consequences.
Yeah, I would like to push back on the idea that the UN Charter has been thrown out, but it's a bit difficult. Again, this is for the US and the Europeans who spoke for the past 3 years about unprovoked aggression in Ukraine. This is an actual unprovoked aggression, and I've seen so far this morning the responses coming from Kaja Kallas, the EU foreign policy chief, and Ursula von der Leyen, the president of the European Commission, was, Iran is not allowed to have a nuclear weapon, which is a very, yeah, which at least I interpret as a statement of support. But this is the only thing they have to lean into, it seems. That is, well, Iran can't have a nuclear weapon, and Israel has a right to defend itself. It's such a strange argument to make when when their own intelligence services recognize there is no nuclear weapons program, and it was a surprise attack. I mean, this is yeah, I don't, beyond what's being done to Iran and the non-proliferation treaty, I don't think people appreciate necessarily what's being done to international law. You can't really go back to what it was anymore. But you did mention the Iran might pull out of the non-proliferation treaty as a consequence. Would this be simply as seeing as a way of yeah, not wanting the inspections, given that the IAEA hands over information, or would it be perhaps also to develop a nuclear weapons as a as a deterrent against future attacks?
I can't speak on behalf of the government, but I think that without a doubt, the questions that are being raised in Iran is that the IAEA, which acts as an agent for the West, obtains information and passes it on to Iran's adversaries so that they can bomb the country. And then, as you pointed out, Western leaders and politicians and officials justify it and say Israel has the right to defend itself. So the Israelis can slaughter people, destroy countries, carry out war, and it's all self-defense. Anything that the Israeli regime does, whether it's massacring children, as we saw this morning, there was another major massacre, it's all self-defense. The Europeans, Americans have created this dystopian world where words mean nothing anymore. They just play with words, and the meaning of words is what they choose for them to mean at that particular moment. And that's why I'm saying that um, the UN Charter has been thrown out the window. Now, I understand why you say that that may be not completely the case, but I think that under the circumstances that we live in, it's clear that the UN Charter is not going to be anything that stops an aggression or anything that stops war or slaughter or genocide. And we've been seeing that for at least the last 20, 21 months. But I think for Iran, the most important thing right now is that it will have to retaliate. I don't know if Iran will leave the NPT now, but I think that uh, it is being pushed in that direction. It may happen. I don't know. I'm not a decision maker, but it may happen. But if it doesn't, I'm sure that the argument for leaving the NPT is growing stronger. And I think Iran is going to continue to hammer the Israeli regime until the regime becomes exhausted. And it's clear that it's losing. If it wasn't losing, they wouldn't be so uh, keen on and insistent on the Americans entering the war in which they did last night. So, this is not going to change the equation to the benefit of the Israelis. It just further unifies the Iranians. It creates greater concern across the global South about the fact that the United States has gone rogue, just like its Zionist allies in Tel Aviv, and that the Europeans are actors that will obediently follow the Americans, no matter what atrocities they carry out, no matter what violations they carry out. This is not good news for the West. I don't think anyone in the West should be celebrating. Fox News can celebrate all they want, but I think that it's clear that this is going to harm the United States more than anyone else.
Yeah, this is the problem of peacetime alliances. One of the challenges is that the loyalty to military blocs is elevated above international law, even though countries do recognize that unraveling it will have severe consequences. You did say Iran will have to retaliate, and yeah, I guess asking whether or not it would seems like a silly question at this point. But what do you see as likely the targets of retaliation? Do you think Iran would focus primarily on Israel, or do you think there would be a need to go directly after the US? And well, I guess if the latter, what are the best possible targets?
Well, I think there's no the the file. There's a separate file for the United States, and the striking of Israeli targets will continue as before. And as I said this morning, there was a particularly heavy strike with new missiles that did very significant damage to the regime. And we have to remember that Israel is not big. When Iran strikes an area, it has huge ramifications for the whole country, whereas Iran, on the other hand, is huge. And the Israelis, when they strike, people don't know about it unless they hear the news on social media. So if there's even in Tehran, if there's a strike on, and you've been to Tehran, if there's a strike, let's say that hits one side of Tehran, you don't hear about it on the other side of Tehran unless you see it in the news. And the Israeli missiles and drones, their warheads are much smaller. Many of them are downed, but those that strike their targets, they have small warheads. But the Iranian missiles have very heavy payloads. They're very destructive, as you can see in the images. So that's one, the Israeli issue is separate. So my belief is that the Iranians will strike the Americans very hard, but the Iranians are not an emotional, they don't let their emotions take over. Iran is very calculating, very, um, uh, they look at what's happened, they analyze the situation, and then they make a decision. So Iran could have immediately struck back last night at, let's say, targets in the Persian Gulf region, for example. But it didn't do so because the Iranians want to see exactly what the Americans did, because there are infinitely different types of scenarios, depending on how hard the Americans hit, what the Americans hit, how many targets the Americans hit. If the Americans hit multiple targets and do a lot of damage, that's a very different thing from bombing a place that's already been bombed multiple times and not doing any significant damage. Uh, but still, it's an act of aggression. So I think that the Iranian leaders, political leaders, the military leaders are probably right now having discussions on what sort of response should we have that would deter the United States in future, on the one hand, but that would also be seen by the global South, our friends, allies, the international community, as as um, as being as reasonable. So that the because right now Iran has huge global support, and I've never seen so much support for Iran uh, throughout the world, throughout the global South, and even among the public in the West. This is, for me, quite stunning how attractive Iran has become to so many different people. So Iran wants to keep that um, of course, obviously they want the people to continue to support, but they also want global South governments to support Iran's position. So I think Iran will take everything into consideration, but I think there will be a serious military response because this was a serious act of aggression, regardless of the fact that it may not have had all that much damage.
Yeah, it's I was thinking the same that Iran's response would probably be will have to be measured or calculated based on well to be somewhat symmetrical of the damages inflicted on it because as you said uh, the winning the hearts and minds I guess of the not just the global south but the entire world has to be balanced with the need to restore a deterrent. But uh, yeah, because I think yeah, I see the same after 2 years of almost 2 years of genocide, and of course this surprise attack during negotiations. I think a lot of this has built a lot of sympathies towards Iran, which it wouldn't want to squander. But but does this impact also the kind of targets? For example, would Iran be more hesitant to strike U.S. bases in Gulf states? Worried that that could ruin relations there, or even bring Gulf states directly into a war, or I guess were the relations ruined when they let their territories be used against Iran?
Well, these states in the Persian Gulf, they are not strong enough to enter any war. They are helpless, and they are not dependent on their own people because they're family dictatorships across the board. And so they're completely vulnerable. So if Iran, for whatever reason, strikes, they're not in a position to do anything about it. And Iran does see all of them as complicit because all of them have U.S. bases, and um, they all are complicit in what the United States has been doing in Gaza and in Yemen, in Qatar, for example, and the Emirates and Bahrain. They are and their bases have been used to help the bombing campaign in Yemen, for example. That's just one example. But these bases have also been used for Gaza. So they're completely bound to the West. None of them want war because they know that if there is war between Iran and the United States, all of these family regimes will be swept away. Nothing will be left. I don't know what the Iranians will do. I really don't have any idea, but I think there will be a balancing act. On the one hand, it will have to be a strike where the Americans are punished and where the world sees that Iran has hit back at the superpower in a way in which others won't dare to do. But at the same time, Iran wants to show China, Russia, India, Brazil, BRICS countries, countries across the global south, that we don't want to wreck the global economy. It's the other side that's pushing the boundaries and then it's leading the world towards a potential global crisis. So, this is balancing act. You have to punish the Americans, but you also have to show the international community that it is the other side that is unreasonable and that we are the side that's reasonable. I think that's always been the case, by the way. But I think for the first time ever, um, people across the world are recognizing this, and people are the seeing through Western media and the narratives created by Western governments, which for decades had a huge amount of influence on perceptions on Iran. But that has changed, I think, and Iran wants to use this opportunity to further marginalize the United States, further marginalize the West, further marginalize the Israeli regime, to show them to be the irresponsible and rogue regimes that they are, and that they are the ones who are putting the global economy at risk, and that Iran is the side that will hit back hard to punish and to create um, to force the Americans um, to be to take into consideration the the how should I put it, the consequences of their aggression, and for the Americans to think twice before carrying out aggression again, while at the same time showing that the problem is the Americans.
How easy is it for Iran, though, to physically, I guess, retaliate against the targets? The Americans primarily have, well, of course, they have military bases, but they have, the way I see it, they accrued a lot of air power in the region, which is also parked around the region. But uh, I think well, it seems as if they're most vulnerable uh, would be the ships, which they've now also sent quite a few. I guess, how easy accessible are they, or to what extent are the Americans able to protect these assets? Because, well, it does seem as if the lost ship might have a dual impact. On one hand, it might be more concerns within the United States about what they're getting themselves into, that it's not simply another Iraq where you get to, hit the other guy without anything coming back. On the other side, it could also instigate support for for harsher strikes against Iran. So how how do you see the ability to actually hit some of these ships? Because as we've seen now with the strikes on Israel, Iran has some fairly sophisticated missiles and drones. Could you,
Well,
by the
first, I
way,
just wanted to.
could Iran, for example, reach the island Diego Garcia in the Indian Ocean, which is used by the Americans? Sorry, it's my ignorance about capabilities here, I guess.
No, not at all. I just wanted to say that the word that I was searching for this whole time, and I was constantly thinking, and I was deterrence. That Iran wanted to, on the one hand, has to create deterrence by striking the United States, by punishing the United States, but it also simultaneously wants to keep the international community on its side, international sympathy on its side, and to reinforce uh, the fact, or the belief that everyone has across the global South, that the United States is the aggressor. So it's they will have to strike. I think the strike will be substantial, but it will be done in a way to make sure everyone see that Iran is the one that's always been responsible and is being responsible. But Iran can strike Diego Garcia. In fact, the way I would put it, Glenn, is that Iran can hit the Americans far more effectively than they can hit the Israelis. And you see how easily they're striking Israel without the Israelis being able to do anything about it. Striking the Americans is much easier. Uh, Iran has um, Iran has tens of thousands of long-range missiles, and even I think Netanyahu admitted this a couple of days ago. Um, and of course, tens of thousands of long-range drones. Iran has hundreds of thousands of medium and short-range missiles and drones, and they're much more precise because the shorter the range, the more precision there is. So, and they're much more easy to move around. They're much more easy to hide. They're much more easy. So it's much more difficult for an air force or for an adversary to block a country from firing such missiles. So if Iran wanted to engage in battle with the United States, the firepower that Iran has at its disposal would be crushing, because Iran has been preparing itself for battle with the United States since the invasion of Afghanistan and Iraq. That's the focus of Iran's defense. Defending itself against the Israeli regime is one thing, but defending itself against the Americans, which is a much more powerful adversary, is another thing. So the focus of Iran's defense has always been on the United States. And that's why if there is an all-out war, uh, there's no doubt that the United States will no longer have assets in the Persian Gulf. that will be the end of the U.S. presence in the region, because Iran, if it's all out war, then everything that the United States has will be devastated, and those regimes that are bound to the United States will be gone. I think that's why, and again, this is a personal interpretation, and I don't want to decrease the significance of this act of war that the Americans carried out, but I think that's why the United States chose to bomb something that was already bombed and that did not do really that much damage because it knows the capabilities that Iran has. So this was, I think, Trump's attempt to have to protect himself from retaliation. But that retaliation is going to come, and as we discussed earlier, but it will be calculated, it will be carefully discussed or carefully analyzed the situation, and the response will be, I think, um, based upon the findings of the politicians and the leaders and the military officials that are involved.
Are we, do you think we're heading towards an all-out war though? Because, well, the way I see it, if Iran hits back with too little, and any restraint would probably be seen as weakness, which could embolden, while if it hits back hard, it would be seen as being aggressive, which would have to, which would demand a response from the US. So no matter what happens, it seems as if we're heading towards some form of escalation. Well, it's hard to see that Iran will hit back and that's somehow the end of it. Did you see it at like an all-out war being the most likely scenario now?
Iran has prepared itself for all-out war, and its plan is to hit back if it happens to hit back very hard, because in order to prevent it from continuing, Iran will have to go all in. So Iran is prepared for that. But Iran doesn't want that. And Iran wants the world to know that it doesn't want that. The only people that want an all-out war and they want destruction for the global economy is Netanyahu and his Zionist and neocon allies, who are willing to sacrifice the United States and everything for this colony. But so Iran's first choice is definitely not all-out war. Iran's response will be proportionate. It will be to deter and to create deterrence, but it will be also done in a way so that everyone will recognize that Iran is the responsible actor. And if Trump is sane, if he's smart, he will discontinue. But if he continues again, then Iran will strike back again. And that could lead to a situation where everyone across the world loses.
Uh, I wanted to ask, yeah, lastly about Iran's allies in the region, though. How, because the United States and Israel's been picking them off over the past few years now. That is the Palestinians, of course, the regime change in Syria, Hezbollah, Yemen. There've been, to what extent are they in a position to assist or yeah, help Iran, or are they not, or do you think they would be part of any retaliation? Because I've seen some rhetoric coming from Yemen, at least, that they are yeah, ready to stand with Iran. Again, one never knows what is yeah, talk or what's going to happen, but what is state of Iran's partners in the region?
Well, I think it's uh, clear that Yemen is uh, is growing more powerful. After defeating the United States, it's strengthening its military capabilities, and morale is high there. But also, I think you should add Iraq. Iraqis have mobilized. The condemnations have been severe over the last week. Religious leaders, politicians, military officials have all been giving out warnings to the United States. And Iraq has a very large population. It's much bigger than Lebanon. And the Iraqi military and the Popular Mobilization Forces are very capable military. They helped defeat ISIS alongside the Iranians and Hezbollah and others. They defeated ISIS. So if there is escalation, they would definitely be part of the equation. Hezbollah is of course regrouping. It's preparing itself for the next phase, but the Israelis, contrary to what they like to say, they haven't taken out in the resistance groups or Yemen. They if Hezbollah has been weakened, or if Hamas has been weakened, or if Islamic Jihad has been weakened, as they say, they've been weakened too. In fact, Israel has been much weakened much more than anyone else. The war with Iran is not going well for the Israeli regime. If it was going well, the Americans would not have gotten involved. But it's clear that Iran has the upper hand, both when it comes to offensive capabilities and defensive capabilities. The Iranians are downing lots of missiles and drones. The Israelis are incapable of downing most of Iranians' very heavy missiles and the more modern missiles in particular. So it's not a good situation for the Israeli regime. But for the Americans, if there's all-out war, imagine what the Popular Mobilization Force in Iraq and what Yemen could do. Yemen could decide to take back territory that belonged to it from the Saudis. Iraq could take back Kuwait. What is the United States going to be able to do about that? Nothing. This is not the 1990s anymore. So, by throwing the UN Charter out the window, as I was claiming earlier, or severely weakening it, as you point out, uh, the United States has opened a box where in future you could have similar uh, uh, acts of war or aggression or similar military moves by one country, and no one can complain about it. If, let's say, Malaysia takes Singapore, who's going to do anything about it? Who can do anything about it? Based on what argument? So if Iraq takes Kuwait, which it has said belongs to it historically, rightly or wrongly, that's not the point. There's nothing that the United States can do about it in future. If Yemen decides to take revenge on Saudi Arabia for the years of genocide and invade Saudi Arabia in case of a regional war, what is the United States going to do about it? The United States already has more than enough on its hands in its confrontation with Iran. And of course, Iran's military capabilities, as I said earlier, in the Persian Gulf region are extraordinary. So, you know, imagine the potential for the sort of chaos that could ensue as a result of what the United States and the Europeans are doing. It would be devastating for the world. It will change the map, and it will bring down the empire, but I think it will create economic misery for people across the world.
I guess all the different ways this could yeah, escalate, drag in other parts of the region and indeed wider world. It's yeah, it's such a big theme. You would hope that they had thought about this before they launched this attack on Iran, but seemingly no. So I know you're yeah very busy. Must have been yeah rough last 12 hours. So yeah, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it, and yeah, stay safe.
Not at all, Glenn. It's a great pleasure, an honor, and very happy to be with you. Thank you for having me.